Thank you. All right, so we've been covering, obviously, an overview of the Bible. We've been going through each book as we can every week. This week, we're going to be touching on 1 Kings. Please, guys, I've got it up on a spreadsheet. I was trying to see how was the easiest way to bring this information across. There's multiple ways, but I've worked it out like this for now. I'm not going to send the notes out yet. They're incomplete. Reason being is there's also 2 Kings that we need to look at as well, which overlaps. And then there's also some studies with Chronicles, which if we take a look, there's a lot of duplication that's coming through from Chronicles and Kings. But once that's done, I'll send it through. Billy's going to bring up the spreadsheet for us here. I know it's a bit messy. It's not what we normally do from a PowerPoint, but there's a lot of information. Really touching and highlighting on the high levels. There are going to be, when I do drop the other information out, there'll be other sheets as well. Billy, if you can maybe just go through to sheet 2 and 3 for me, please. This isn't complete, as you can see. I'm still busy working on this one. This will be the kings of Judah. We'll go through all those, how long they reigned for, the years that they reigned through, who the successions were, the possible co-heirs. Something you need to keep in mind of when you're reading through Kings, you have an overlap of kings that happens. And it can sometimes make things confusing. So when you do take a look at dates, when you take a look at times, keep in mind that there is an overlap of kings in certain areas. I'm going to highlight that as well. If we take a look at sheet 3, these are the kings of Israel. So just to, I will get into the understanding of the split now, but you'll see when this comes through, so it'll make more sense for you. But where we are at the moment is we're going to start touching on the beginning of Kings. So just to briefly summarize from what Regan did, if we take a look at 1 Samuel, that's really the life of the beginning of Samuel and Saul and the king and reignship of Saul. The end of 1 Samuel ends with Saul dying. With 2 Samuel, it really picks up from the reign of David. And that takes you through 2 Samuel right through to the end. And that is then where David starts coming through to his old age. And when we get into 1 Kings, it is where David now is in the end of his life, and where he's now starting to hand over the reign through to Solomon. The main thing we need to remember with Kings, and I think something that we need to remember today as well, is when God is not with you or you remove yourself from God, things become very, very messy. Reading through this and seeing where we are today as well, and during the prayer, there's a specific section here which I'm going to get into where King rebukes a prophet and his hand shrivels up. And he doesn't repent for what he's done. He asks the prophet to pray to your God and restore him. I mean, if you're pointing your finger out to a prophet and you're saying something and your hand shrivels up and you can't pull it back, surely that should be saying to you, wake up, what are you doing? And if we take a look, Solomon, he has a prayer which I'll get through to just now as well, when he builds the temple, and he dedicates it to God. And he said, if people pray towards this temple, and he actually talks about the Jews, and then he says to those who are not Jews, those that are Gentiles, please hear what they are saying. In famine, in pestilence, in disease, in plague. And the thing is, are we turning and praying to God at this time for what we need to do? So it's a sobering book. It's not a very nice book to read. And the interesting thing is, God installed these kings, he put them in there, and he also brought up adversaries against them to show them what they were doing wrong, and they never really took note of what was happening. Some did. But if you take a look at the amount of kings that there were and what was actually happening, there were more evil rulers than there were good. And that's the thing that we need to look at as well, right? We need to pray for our leaders. We need to pray that God softens their heart. We need to pray. We understand God puts them there. And very often we get what we want, or let me rephrase that, we get what we deserve. Because the way we live, the way we do things, and then when things don't go quite well, we blame God for it. So that's very much the tone of the book. It's very interesting, but I'm going to get into it. So if you guys can see, I've got the references in column A. I've got a brief summary of the king and then some notes. Can you guys see? I will be reading it out and I will drop it out probably in about 2-3 weeks time, because we've got camp next week, and then obviously after that we're going to do 2 Kings, and then I'll drop it out after that once it's finalized. All right, so if we take a look at 1 Kings 1 to 27, guys, if you've got your Bibles, you can open up, you can follow with me, just to give you the structure of how I've done this. I've taken the NIV and I've taken the main headings of the chapters, and then I've just done summaries of pieces in that chapter. So if you want to do it that way, you can kind of follow me if you want to do it through that way. So if you bring it up in your phones, your tablets, if you've got the NIV Bibles, I know the CJB doesn't necessarily have the headings in it for the chapters, but that's the way I took this. So 1 Kings 1 to 27, Adonijah sets himself up as king. So what happens here is David's on the deathbed. He's going to be dying very soon. Adonijah is his son. He then says, right, I'm going to become king. He gets some of his guys together. They're going to have a party, and he says, right, I'm king. Then what happens is Bathsheba and I think it's Nathan the prophet hear about this and says, whoa, what's going on here? David, do you know what's actually happening? So then what they do is David brings in Solomon, and he gets Solomon to ride on his mule, puts the king's clothes on him, and says, right, this is my son, this is my king, this is who I install as the king, and then Solomon becomes the true king. If we take a look at 1 Kings 2, 1 to 12, David's charge of Solomon, 1 Kings 2, 13 to 46, Solomon's throne is established. And the interesting thing is, during this time, just before David dies, David gives Solomon a summary of what's happened and who he needs to take a look at and who he needs to take out, because David's promised he won't kill certain people, and who he needs to lift up. And if we take a look there, so then Solomon listens to David, and he then takes out the people that he needs to take out, and then he lifts up those he needs to lift up. Then we take a look, and Solomon goes before God. Well, should I say God appears to Solomon, says to Solomon, what do you want? I will give you anything. And it's actually a very good prayer that Solomon asks for. Solomon says, Father, you've put me in charge of your people. They're a great people. You've put me in charge of your land. David's been good. My father's had a heart after you. I pray that you please give me wisdom and knowledge and counsel on how to lead your people. And God was very, very pleased with that. He said, you know what, because of your prayer, you could have prayed for wealth, you could have prayed for protection, you could have prayed that your enemies don't come up against you, but because you didn't and you asked for wisdom on how to lead my people, not only will I give you wisdom, but you will be the wisest person that has ever lived or to live. Kings will come to you for counsel, and you will have peace in your land. If you follow my commandments and my statutes and you do not turn away from them. If you do what your father David did and follow after me with your heart. So Solomon says thank you, and he gets his wisdom. We then get the first aspect into what it is. So 1 Kings 3, 16 to 28. We know the story of the 2 prostitutes who have a baby. Each has a baby. One rolls on top of the baby and she kills her baby. She then swaps the baby out at night, puts the other baby next to the other one, and when she wakes up in the morning, the lady who rolled onto her baby has got the live baby, and the lady who was sleeping has got the dead baby. So they go before Solomon. They say, Solomon, listen, this is what's happened. This woman's taken my son. When I was wanting to nurse him in the morning, I could see that he was not my son. Please help us. And this other lady said, no, it's my son. It's my son. So you know what? Just tell her not to worry about it. And David says, okay, cool. Solomon says, no problem. Bring me a sword. Let's cut him in 2. And then, you can take one half and you can take the other half. And the mom of the true son said, no, what are you doing? No, do not. Rather just let that lady have it, and then, just let him live. And the other woman was like, no, cut him in half. Let's each have half. And from that heart condition, Solomon could see who was the true Mom. And then his fame then surpassed him and went around all around the known areas at that stage of his wisdom that was starting to come through. If we then take a look at, just give me a second here. If we take a look at 1 Kings 1 Kings 4, 1 to 19, Solomon then sets up his officials and governors. So he's now come in, he's got wisdom, he's now setting up structure within his council, within his land, within his kingdom. I think it talks about the governors that come through there. In 1 Kings 4, 20 to 28, it talks about Solomon's daily provision. And I haven't gone into too much detail yet, but guys, it is crazy the amount of flour and bulls and lambs and the amount of animals that Solomon used on a daily basis. I've got some more details for you just now, but I mean, there's one stage, if you take a look at 1 Kings 8, when he's dedicating the temple, he sacrifices 22,000 cattle, 120,000 sheep and goats. That's a lot. But so then it goes through the daily provisions. If you take a look at 1 Kings 4, 29 to 34, it talks about Solomon's wisdom and how kings were now coming up to him and asking him for guidance and counsel. In 1 Kings 5, 1 to 18, preparations for building of the temple start. Before I carry on, you guys good? Not going too fast? Okay. So from 1 Kings 5, 1 to 18, Solomon then prepares the building of the temple. Keep in mind, it was in David's heart. Sorry? Oh, cool. It was in David's heart to build a temple for God. And David knew that this temple cannot contain you. The expanse of the universe cannot contain you. But going back to God's heart right from the beginning, what did God want to do? He wanted to walk and commune with us. He wanted to live with us. Emmanuel, God with us. We take a look, Sukkot is coming up. He wants to tabernacle with us. God wants to be with us. He's not this external being or entity that is unknown or unknowing, that we don't know. It says that he lives inside of us. He is in us. And that we are the temple now that he's now dwelling within. And how awesome is it going to be one day when we actually are going to be co-ruling and reigning with them, with Yeshua, for that 1,000 years. And when everything after that will be done away with, new heavens and earth created, it's going to be back to where he initially wanted it to be. But this is just a foresight, a glimmer of what's coming through. Reed, do you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add in that you mentioned about David's older son trying to take the throne and announcements of king. In Samuel and King, you don't see within that promise that God gives David that your son will rule your kingdom, the everlasting kingdom. So we don't see the name of Solomon being brought up. In Chronicles, there's actually his name brought up in that promise. So when Bathsheba goes before him, Nathan says, tell David this, it was actually part of the promise that Solomon, because he was a peacemaker, that he would be put in place. So we have a situation where once again we've got the anointed king and we've got someone that's trying to steal the throne.
Spot on. So just for camera, for what Regan's saying is, so just taking a look at the parallel between the anointed king and the person who's trying to usurp the throne. And it's the same as we see, right? So the anointed king is Yeshua, and you've got Hasatan running around doing his shenanigans because he's trying to get what he wants, but we know it's not going to work because the prophecy's already been done. It's already been foretold. We know exactly where we're going to land up and where he's going to land up. Thanks, Reeks. Okay, so if we get to 1 Kings 6, 1 to 38, Solomon builds the temple. So if we take a look, the temple starts being built 480 years after the Israelites come out of Egypt. It's the 4th year of Solomon's reign. So prior to that, he's setting up his kingdom, doing what he's needing to do, get the administration done, make sure that he's got the correct people in the correct places to do what needs to be done. Okay, in the month of Ziv, the 2nd month, the temple began to get built, and it took 7 years to complete. If we take a look at 1 Kings 7, 1 to 12, Solomon builds his palace. Solomon's palace takes 13 years to complete. 1 Kings 7, 13 to 51, the temple's furnishing. We can see here that in 1 Kings 7:21 specifically, it talks about the two pillars. I'm wanting to highlight this because often it comes through about the two pillars. You've got the north and the south pillar. You've got the pillar of Jachin, which means he establishes. And then you have the pillar of Boaz, in him is strength. And very often those two pillars which stand in front of the temple is talking about God and talking about the son and the ruleship that's coming through. And as we know, Boaz was also the kinsman redeemer for Ruth, right? Okay, 1 Kings 8, 1 to 21. The ark is now brought into the temple. It's brought up from the city of Zion, from the city of David. At the time, the festival is the 7th month. And just interestingly enough, the ark is brought into the temple in the 7th month. And if you take a look at the 7th month, the festival that had happened there is Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. And I try to see where would this fall. It doesn't specifically say, but my assumption would be Sukkot, where this happens. And the reason for that is there's a 7-day feast, and then they extend it for another 7 days, and it'll be coming through now. But also, symbolically, when that ark is brought into the temple, that is when God's presence rested, and he then tabernacled in the temple. You guys good? Just checking speed. I know there's a lot of information, so please guys just put up your hand if I'm going too fast, or if you have any questions. Okay, so interesting thing around the ark. What was specifically in the ark at this time were the 2 stone tablets. Can anybody tell me what was in the ark besides the 2 stone tablets that have been mentioned previously? Okay, the jar of manna and Aaron's staff, right? Okay, so that doesn't seem to be in the ark anymore at this point in time. So I just wanted to raise that. So the 2 stone tablets. Why 2 stone tablets? Anybody know? So a copy for God, a copy for us, right? So remember, it was written back and front, 5-5, 5-5. No matter what happens from a contractual point, contractual law, you have a contract, and the person that you're contracting with has a contract. That's why these 2. And you keep it in the safest place that you know, the safest place in this place being in the Ark of the Covenant within the Holy of Holies, right? Okay, so in 1 Kings 8:22-61, this is where Solomon's prayer of dedication comes through. We see that people pray towards Jerusalem, as Solomon asks, and this is in 1 Kings 8:30. Solomon specifically says, when the people pray towards this place. And I was taking a look at this and thinking about, when our Jewish brothers and sisters pray towards Jerusalem, why do they do it? It's not specifically stated in Torah. Okay, remember the first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. But we find it here where Solomon has dedicated the temple. And Solomon prays first for the Jewish people. He says, Father, when you hear your people praying towards this place and at this place, hear from heaven and act. And then he says, but your word is going to go out to the ends of the earth. And when those people that are not Israelites pray towards this place, hear from heaven and act. So I did this purely because it was interesting to see this. So I downloaded a compass and I put where Jerusalem is and where we are at the moment. That'll be Jerusalem that way. So if you're wanting to take a look, it's north. So where we are, we're South Africa. So if you face north, you're facing towards, if you're wanting to keep this. It's not mandated from Torah, but it's interesting that Solomon prayed this and God said, interestingly enough, as he said to the kings, if my people that are called by my name keep my commands, I will stand up and I will act. Now think about that, guys. The King of the universe will hear you, will respond to you, and will act on your behalf if you keep his word. If you do what he wants. And we'll find out what happens if you don't. Right, so the dedication of the temple. It says here to hear from heaven and forgive. And it asks specifically famine, plague, disease, and as for the foreigners, do the same. So the question here is, why do we have what we have today going around the globe? Okay, there's global pandemic that's happening at the moment. Are we standing up? Are we doing what God asks? Are we keeping his commands? Because it says, if you do this, then I will. Remember when you did that whole study, how to study a Bible, the ifs and the thens? If ABC, then I will XYZ. So that's the question, right? Take a look at it. And keep in mind, guys, pray for your leaders. Okay, so if we take a look at 1 Kings 9, 1-9, the Lord appears to Solomon. So he says, putting my name there, he says, I will put my name there. I accept this, what you do. And very interestingly enough, I've just made a note here. If you take a look in the mountain ranges of Judea, it's got the Yotevave in the mountain range. I haven't got the pictures here, but you guys can go and take a look. And also it's got the Shin in the mountain range, which represents Yeshua. And interestingly enough, there was a video that we put on the group a while ago. If you take a look, I can't remember which temple, which side of the temple wall it is. There's a wall at the moment in Israel, and the Yotevave, and half the last hay, is actually being marked on the temple wall. And it looks like it is moss, algae, something natural that's growing there, but God's name is being re-established and re-put on the temple wall. Not, well, remember that's a boundary wall, so it wouldn't be specifically the temple, but it's the closest at the moment, right? And if you take a look, when that starts happening, I think we need to stand up and think about what's happening in this world at the moment. Okay, so the Lord appears to Solomon, and then if we take a look at 1 Kings 9, 10-28, Solomon's other activities. So what it really does is he does other buildings. He talks about the gold. The amount of gold that he was bringing in was crazy. If I did the conversion, at any given time it was about 4.5 tons of gold. When people gave him gifts, it was give or take 4 tons of gold that he was being given as gifts. It says that in the days of Solomon, silver was worthless because of the amount of gold that flowed. And that shows you God's blessings when you walk according to God. Okay, so he also built a fleet of ships. If we take a look then at 110 Kings 1-13, this is when the Queen of Sheba comes and visits Solomon, and she says, I've heard about all your wealth, I've heard about all your wisdom, I've heard about all that people have said about you. And after she was with him and sat with him and spoke with him and dined with him and saw the food and saw his administration and his setup and his palace and the temple, she said, but I could not even conceive the words that have been said. And we think about what we get promised one day when we will be with God in heaven, and it says, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind can conceive of what God has in plan for us. And no matter what you guys are going through, no matter how hard the difficulties, no matter if it's financial, spiritual, physical, whatever it may be, always look to the end, guys. As Paul was saying, complete the race. You need to finish. Because what is in store for us, we cannot even fathom. Not biblical. Some people have said you will be able to taste colors, smell colors. I mean, we know that the roads in heaven are paved with gold. My kids say, yo, Dad, can't we have some gold one day when we're in heaven? It's like, why would you want paving stones? And that's what it's going to be like, right? Okay, so if we take a look then, just give me a second, just lost my place. Okay, so now in 1 Kings 10, 14-29, it talks about Solomon's splendor and wealth. In 1 Kings 1:11, And this is where we find that the turn happens. So it says Solomon did all this. He had all this wisdom, all these kings, all these queens, all these nations. Everybody came to him for wisdom and understanding. And in 1 Kings 11:1 it says, however. And that's a big but. Now, have you ever heard, everything you say is great until you get to a but, because that means everything that you've said before that means nothing. But. And in 1 Kings 11:2 it says, nevertheless. So in 1 Kings 11:1, but he had 700 wives, royal birth. So that was 700 princesses, right? Of royal birth that led him astray. The wisest man on earth, the wealthiest potentially ever known. And he had 300 concubines. In 1 Kings 11:5 it says he followed Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Moloch, the detestable god of the Ammonites. 1 Kings 11:6, so Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord. And in 1 Kings 11:6 we see Chemosh, the detestable god of Moab, he also started worshipping. So he made this splendid temple for God, adorned it in gold, silver. His riches throughout his land was innumerable. Silver was worth nothing because of the gold that was flowing. And then he goes and puts these chochos up on the high places and goes and worships them and turns from God. And you know, we think, Abba, if I had R1 million in the bank account, 10 million rand, if all my debt was paid, if all my problems were gone, if I. And Abba's saying, if you had that, where would you be? Even with all the wisdom. So what happens then? So God brings up adversaries against him. In 1 Kings 11:14-22, Hadad comes up against him, and then Rezon. And Solomon doesn't really know much peace after that. If we take a look, Jeroboam, in 1 Kings 11:26-40, Jeroboam rebels against Solomon. So we've got Ahijah, the prophet of Shiloh, tore new cloak. So he goes to Jeroboam. He meets him on the road. Jeroboam's got a new cloak on. He tears the cloak into 12. He says, this is from God. God is going to give you 10 of the 12 tribes, but he's going to keep one with Judah, which is Judah with the house of David, for David's sake, because of what David did. And he's going to tear out the kingdom from Solomon because of what Solomon's done, as he's tearing this cloak. He then tells Jeroboam to take the 10 pieces as a prophecy. And once again, God says, if, to Jeroboam, if you do whatever I command you, and you walk in obedience to me and do what is right in my eyes by obeying my decrees and commands, as David my servant did, then I will be with you. I will build you a dynasty, an enduring one as I built for David, and I will give Israel to you. And guys, I'm highlighting these ifs and thens because it's throughout Scripture. If you do this, God will bless you. If you do that, you will be cursed. We know it in the Torah. If you do this, these are the blessings. If you do this, these are the cursings. And then God says, choose life. Choose the blessings. Because if you don't, I'm going to need to smack your bottoms so that you come right. And if you don't, I'm going to smack you again. If you don't, I'm going to smack you again. And then if you don't, I'm going to smack you again. And then eventually, if you don't listen to the smacks I'm going to give you, guess what? I'm just going to hand you over to it. And then there's no coming back, and I'll harden your heart. Or you'll harden your heart against me. Take a look at Pharaoh. Okay, so then 1 Kings 11:41-43, Solomon's death. The interesting thing, gives this whole build-up of what Solomon's done. But when he turned away, a couple of paragraphs after that, done, nothing more to say about Solomon. And it actually says that he died in being evil in the sight of the Lord. So he started strong. And guys, this is for anybody who has been walking the path very shortly, and for anybody who's been walking this path very longly for a while. Guys, keep walking day by day, foot next to foot, lamp unto your path with Torah. And you know what? Lock shields if you need to. Paul talks about the armor of God, right? Have somebody who's accountable with you. Have somebody watching your back. If you're looking forward and you haven't got anybody watching your back, have somebody to walk with you. Discipleship, that's where it comes in. Because you can do everything. And this is where, some doctrines get it so wrong. They say, once saved, always saved. It's never seen in Scripture. Don't miss the opportunity by being silly, by not believing what is put in front of you, by thinking this is a lot of junk, where what does Paul say? Nature cries out to the beauty and the amazement of God. How can you be here with life? How can you be sitting here with the blood life running through you if there is no God? And he says, guys, if you do my word, I will do these things. If you don't, you're going to get smacks. Okay, so then Solomon dies and he reigned for 40 years. And after this, there is a mess in Israel and never sees its former glory ever again. So then what happens is, Israel rebels against Rehoboam. So now Rehoboam comes up, he says, right, I'm king now. He goes and gets some guys together. And remember, he's the son of Solomon. And he has a conversation. So Jeroboam is now fled, because Solomon wanted to kill Jeroboam, so he's fled to Egypt. So now when Solomon dies, Jeroboam comes back and he says, right, he gets together with some of the guys in Israel, an assembly, and he goes before Rehoboam. He says, Rehoboam, we will serve you. However, your father had such a heavy hand on us. It was hard labor. I mean, guys, they had to cut stone, they had to take down lumber and trees, and I mean, the amount of overhead that Solomon had in this kingdom was massive. He said it was hard under your father, understanding what we've got, but it was hard. Please lighten the load for us. And he says, cool, I'll listen to what you're saying, give me 3 days and come back and then I'll give you an answer. So Rehoboam goes to the elders and he says, listen, what should I do? And the elders say, guys, you better listen to these people. If you do what they ask, they will serve you. But if you don't, they're going to fight up against you. So Rehoboam says, cool. Then he goes to his friends and there's a little bit of a party and they have a chat and he says, listen, what should I do? And the friends go, what? Tell them that the weight of your pinky is going to be heavier than the waist of your father, I think it was. So basically, I'm going to bring even more down on you. Whatever you want, I'm going to make it even harder. So, life lesson here. You can get counsel and you can get both good and bad. But did he take this before God? And interestingly, further down, and it broke my brain when I was busy reading this, where a prophet went up and set up another prophet to see if he was actually going to do what God told him to do, and he died because he didn't. So even you can get counsel from a righteous person, you can get counsel from church leaders, you can get counsel from whoever, but if you have gone against God's word that he's got for you, number one, and number two, if you don't bring it before God, you need to really then check yourself and say, where is my counsel? The other thing is, don't have self-counsel, because there's so many cogs, so many things happening in here. We're emotional beings. All this is going through our mind at the moment, with whatever we're going through. So we need that different view. So he says, nope, I'm going to now make it heavier. So they rebel against him. They said, what do we have to do with the house of David? And then they step away. And like that, 10 of the tribes pull out, as it was prophesied. The only tribe that Rehoboam has control over at that stage is Judah. And then if we take a look in 1 Kings 12, 25 to 33, guys, if you can highlight, circle, put a big whatever in your Bible at this point in time, this is the sin that is always referred to in Kings, where it says, and they did what Jeroboam did. And let's take a look at what that was. Jeroboam was given the kingdom of Israel. So now, guys, I want you to look in your mind. Billy, did you just bring up that map for me, please? So when it talks about the split of the kingdom, we hear that there's the north and the south, right? This is where the split happens at this point in time. Solomon has got control over the whole of Israel. He dies, his son comes in, which is Rehoboam, and you've got Jeroboam. In the south is Judah, and in the north are the other 10 tribes. Yeah, thank you. Now, can you guys see that? So there where the red is, you've got Judah, there where you've got green is Israel, right? Thereafter, you'll hear about the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. Always keeping this in your mind. This will help you understand the scripture so much better and what happened. So what happened was Rehoboam now has only got control over one tribe. Interestingly enough, it seems like Benjamin is kind of on the side and hasn't been doing much. They'll be brought in now. And then you've got the northern tribes, which are the 10, and Jeroboam has this. What happens? God said, if you keep my commands, if you do what I asked, I will give you a dynasty like I have for David forever. Jeroboam then gets scared. Because what happens? You still got the festivals. Okay, 3 times a year the men need to go to where? Jerusalem. So he says, right, if the people go down to Jerusalem, they're no longer going to want to be in my kingdom. They're going to go and worship there, and they're going to rebel against me. So what sets into his heart? Fear. Where's our trust today, guys? So now, because of what's happened here, the mess. And guys, I'm repeating this because this is the sin that continuously came through, that every single king thereafter for the northern kingdoms committed. So what does he do? He goes, Dan is in the very north. So if you take a look right at the top, go to the other one. Yeah, go right to the top for me. Okay, see Dan. So what Jeroboam does is he then at Dan, he creates a place and he makes an altar for sacrifice. And down at the bottom at Bethel, he creates another place of sacrifice. And now he then institutes not only his own sacrificial system, he then introduces priests that are not Levitical either. And it actually says in the word, any person could become a priest and do whatever they wanted. Now what happens here, you've got Dan at the top, you've got Bethel, and I want you to take a look how close Bethel is to Jerusalem. Jerusalem's where the temple is and where they should have gone to go and do their sacrifices. Bethel became the main point of sacrifice where the kings started sacrificing on the false altars and when they started moving away from God. They created calves. Once again, we see in Egypt, when they came out in the desert, what did they create? A golden calf. Here, once again, golden calf. What do they say? This is your God, Israel. And Jeroboam institutes this, and the whole entire land falls away. So now he sets up, Jeroboam, he sets up altars, shrines, high places, appointed priests from all sorts of people that were not Levites. Interestingly, he instituted a feast on the 15th day of the 8th month to sacrifice to these calves that he had made. And this was a day, it says specifically in 1 Kings 12:33, the 15th day of the 8th month, a day of his own choosing. Bethel became the main place of worship. And Bethel's very close to Jerusalem, if you see that. So guys, what I want to really highlight here is how often do we do things in our life that God tells us to do, but we go, I'm going to do what I want to do. So let's bring in something real. Easter, Christmas, Valentine's Day, Halloween. Are those God's appointed times? Or are we setting up our own golden calves? And what did God say? If you follow my commands, I'll bless you. If you don't. Okay, so then we've got golden calves in the north and the south. In 1 Kings 13, 1-34, the man of God from Judah comes. Now this is really weird. So God sends a prophet from Judah. It doesn't give a name or anything. It says, right, go to Jeroboam, tell him that your altar is going to be destroyed in half. It's going to become ashes, and your king, your family is going to die. They're not going to get that dynasty that was promised to you because you didn't keep my commands. So the man of God does this, and Jeroboam stretches out his hand and he says, seize that man and kill him. And as he does that, his hand becomes shriveled and he can't pull it back. And then Jeroboam says to the man of God, he says, pray for me to restore my hand. There was no repentance in that. The man of God has come up and said, you've created this, you've put high places, you've got these calves, you've instituted what you want from your own side, you've fallen away from everything that you know is right, you're not following after David's heart, and you're worried about your hand? What do you think my people's hearts look like? What do you think my heart looks like at this stage? So then he prays for him, and his hand gets restored, and then Jeroboam says, well, come eat with me. He says, God told me not to eat with you or drink anything in this land. I need to go. So he went by another way. So then somebody went and told an old prophet about this. And the old prophet then tells his sons to saddles up his donkey, goes to this man of God, sees him under a broom bush, and then says, come and eat and drink with me. He says, no, God told me I'm not to do it. He says, no, but I'm also a prophet. Come eat and drink with me in my house. So he's like, okay, cool, let's go and do it.
He says, God told me that you can come to my house.
Yeah. Thank you, Riggs. God told me you can come to my house. How many times do we hear God told me ... And it actually says he lied to him. Interestingly, this was a prophet. And God spoke to this prophet. Because while they were eating, God spoke to this prophet and said, tell him that he's going to die, he's going to leave here, he's going to be on a road, and a lion is going to maul him. So then, he leaves, he's on his donkey, a lion mauls him, and this is the weirdest thing as well. The lion is sitting next to the road with the donkey on the other side of the road, and the body that has been mauled, and the lion doesn't touch the donkey nor the body. People are walking past this and going, let's go and tell someone about this. And then the prophet hears about it, the old prophet. He then saddles his donkey and goes and gets this man and buries him. He puts him in his tomb and says, all right, bury my bones with him when I'm dead as well. Because one of the prophecies that was specifically said to this guy is, you will not be buried in the tomb of your family. And how often does that happen, where we do things, we hear from people that seriously may be hearing from God, but God might be testing you to see if you're actually following and carrying out his word that he's already given you. And then we make balagan, and the lion mauls us, and we dead on the side of the road, or in the middle of the road, and then we're going, Father, why? And he's like, how many more times do I need to tell you? And Baruch Hashem, we've got Yeshua. Interesting story that. So then 1 Kings 14, 1-20. Before I continue, guys, any questions? You good? Okay, I know it's hot in here, guys. Apologies. Okay, so 1:14, 1-20, Ahijah's prophecy against Jeroboam. So Ahijah comes before Jeroboam. He says, you've done more evil than anybody who lived before you. Now, I wouldn't want that on my scorecard. Only the boy... Oh, so what's happening here is, sorry, just to give the context here. So now, Jeroboam's son is sick with fever. He's in the bed. So he sends his wife to Ahijah, the prophet's house. Ahijah is old in years. He can't see. God tells Ahijah, listen, Jeroboam's wife is coming to you. She's dressed up because she wants to pretend that they don't want him to know who she is. So she knocks on the door. He says, Jeroboam's wife, come in. Why are you hiding yourself? God's told me who you are, and I've got a word for you. When you go home, your son will then die. God will tear out the kingdom from you as he did as for Solomon because of the wickedness that your son has done, your husband has done. He is more evil than anyone that lived before him. And interestingly enough, we think, oh, shame, this boy is going to die. I see mercy here, and I'll tell you why. It says here, only the boy was going to die because only him was found good that God saw in that family. And God removed that boy, because think about it, if he's good and God saw the good, he's now with God. God removed that boy from that family because that family, if he had lived, potentially would have poisoned him. And potentially, in fact, the rest of the family gets taken out, so he would have been taken out with them. So now we often take a look, and I know it's really not nice, guys, to lose loved ones. I mean, I'm sure we all have. But sometimes it's better to have that loss than for them to stay because they may get corrupted further. However, we also know that time is short and that we need to use the time that we have at the moment to bring people to God. In 2 Kings, there's a king there where he prays for an extended life because he was going to die. And before that life, before his extended life, he was good in the sight of God. And the 15 years that God gave him, he made ballyguns. It's life is weird and can be very weird and twisted. But guys, keep focus on God. Okay, so then he says, right, to Jeroboam's wife, when you cross the threshold of your house, the boy will die. My brain is going, I'm not going home then. And then you read, and as a foot crossed the threshold, the boy died. I mean, you know, if this is a king, he in theory could have given you a house somewhere, you his wife, and you wouldn't have had to cross that threshold, right? Yeah. But now on that, God is still giving opportunity for repentance, for teshuvah. Your son is dying because of ABC. Not once does the wife stand in for the husband, fall down on her face, prostrate herself before God, and say, forgive us, please, what have we done? It's like, oh, okay. And dead. Not once does Jeroboam, withered arm, dying son, entire land in turmoil and mess, turn around and say, Abba, Baruch Hashem, please forgive me for what I've done. No. Just carry on with what we're doing. And you know, this is repeating time and time again through our kings. We see this in Judges as well. It's nobody stops and asks, what are we doing? Are we stopping today and asking, what are we doing? Are we living a life that is righteous? Are we living a life that is biblical? Are we living a life that is clean? Are we following God's word? Instead of asking for this thing to be taken away, are we not saying, Father, wake us up and show us what we need to change in our lives? Let's use the kings as our example, right? God has them there for a reason. Sorry? Wow. Okay, I better move. Okay, so Kings 14:20, Nadab. So then Jeroboam, he reigns for 22 years. He dies and Nadab becomes the king. That's his son. Okay, Rehoboam, king of Judah. We see Rehoboam in 1 Kings 14:20 to 31. Rehoboam becomes king at 44 years old and reigns for 17 years. Okay, in Judah he did evil in the eyes of God. In the 5th year of Rehoboam's reign, Shishak, king of Egypt, attacks Jerusalem and takes all the temple treasures. So think about all that gold, everything that Solomon has set up, gone. How many times in life does God take things away from us and we go, but why are you doing that? Because I'd rather see you in heaven with no money than see you with a gazillion bazillion dollars and not see you at all.
Sorry, I just had this thought. When they came out of Egypt, the Egyptians gave them all this wealth. They used that wealth to build the tabernacle. Because God was giving money. God has removed himself when Egypt takes.
Spot on. So just for the camera, Regan is just saying, it's interesting. So Egypt gave them all this wealth, and then Egypt comes back and takes it back when God left them. Spot on. But also when God was there with Solomon, if you go and take a look at the talents of gold and how much stuff he was getting, between gold, silver, spices, linen, horses, goats, sheep, stuff that he was being given fleets of ships. It's just the stuff he was given was astronomical, and it got zapped like that. Okay, and so
So do they get new gold by the time Babylon comes and takes stuff out of the temple?
so the question is, do they get new gold by the time Babylon comes back? So remember, God gives and takes away. There's also, they had gold mines, they were busy trading, they were doing lots of things, so yeah.
There's also kings that came in later that were serving God.
Yep.
So there's restoration to the records.
Okay guys, wow. Are you good for a part 2? I'm going to have to. I don't know if I'm going to get through this. But and the reason I've got the detail here, guys, is because it is so important to understand this stuff. To get kings and prophets bedded down, it sets up your timeline and everything throughout the whole Bible for you. So let's see how far we can go, right? I've got 5 minutes. Okay, so, and then also it says here in 1 Kings 14:27-31, warfare between Rehoboam and Jeroboam, and then son Abijah becomes king. So interestingly enough, there's warfare continuously. I think there was about 3 years of peace between the two, north and the south. Okay, so if we take a look, 1 Kings 15:1-34, Abijah, king of Judah, in the 18th year of the reign of Jeroboam. So this is where you've got the overlap, guys. You've got the north and the south. Then you've got certain kings coming at certain times where there's overlap. But there's also overlap of kings in the specific areas as well. So that's why sometimes when you read this, it goes, oh, but these timings don't. So there's some workings out to get done there. So Rehoboam, where am I now? Sorry, Rehoboam, Abijah. Okay, so in the 18th year reign of Jeroboam, Abijah becomes king of Judah and reigns for 3 years. He was sinful. His heart was not devoted to God, and there was war between Abijah and Jeroboam. So north and south kingdom. 1 Kings 15:9-24, Asa, king of Judah. So in the 20th year of Jeroboam, Asa becomes king and reigns for 41 years, and Asa did good. He removed the temple prostitutes, he removed the shrines, he removed the Haningans that were going on. The only thing that he didn't do was remove the high places. And it says he did everything that was good, but he didn't remove the high places. And it's just interesting, you get this whole thing today, right? This religious tolerance and etc., etc. And if we had to remove the rubbish in our lives, have we, I know we're short on time, but I want to give you a story. It makes so much sense. So the story is about this guy wants to sell a house, and it is a mansion, and the people that come to buy it don't really have the money. So he says, okay, I'll tell you what, all I want is a nail, and I'm just going to put on top of the doorpost, and that's all I want. I'm going to give you this house for free, and you can live here for as long as you want. So nails in the door, the nail goes into the doorpost, and he goes away for a couple of years, and he comes back and he says, listen, I'd like to take my house back, I'll buy it from you. They're like, no, we're living here. You said we can live here for as long as we want. No problem, that was the agreement. So he goes out, he finds a carcass, and he hangs it up on the nail in front of the door. And he says, that's mine, you can't touch that. So the stink goes through the house, gets into the curtains, the clothes, the whatever, and these guys can't live in this house anymore and they leave. How often do we give our lives to God and say, I'll give you everything, but I'm going to keep this? And that stink and rot sets in and defiles the whole house, which was given to you for free. You'd paid nothing for it, but a blood sacrifice on the cross was given for you. Guys, I'm going to stop there. Looking at time, I'm definitely going to need to do a part 2. We were hoping to do a book a week. Sorry, Riggs. But it's important to get this down, guys. And when we do Chronicles as well, if you set up, and like I'm saying, prophets and kings, if you set that up, whenever you're reading throughout the rest of the Old Testament and the New Testament that comes through, and it talks about the kings, and it talks about the sin of Jeroboam, and you sinned as your father did, as Jeroboam did, you can see where it comes through. Okay, cool. Can we close in prayer, guys? Before I do, any questions, any comments, anything that somebody wants to say?
Just one thing with Solomon is that he understood his grandfather. Wasn't grandfather, but say his step-grandfather, I don't know what, Saul. Chased David his whole life. Solomon knew that David was anointed king, yet there was this fight between him and Saul, between David and Saul. Yet Solomon does the same thing. He knew that God had stripped the kingdom away from Saul, given to his father. Here, Jeroboam is given. And what does Solomon do? He acts exactly the same way as Saul. Doesn't repent.
Because he could have, right? He could have.
He commits the same sin with Saul, but he goes out against the God's and tries to kill him, and he is.
Yep, spot on. So just for camera, what Regan is saying is Saul, we know that went after David, and David was an anointed person of God. But David would not kill Saul. And if we take a look with Jeroboam had already said, because of the sin of Solomon, that God was going to give Jeroboam the 10 kingdoms. And when Solomon found out about it, he then tried to kill Jeroboam, and that's why Jeroboam had to flee to Egypt. And Solomon knew from his grandfather, step-grandfather, to what you're saying, because he was the son of Bathsheba, so because of that, he didn't repent. If we take a look, Solomon didn't repent, right? And it says that he died in the evil in the eyes of the Lord. He could have repented at any stage. And guys, it comes back to heart condition, back to pride, back to stubbornness, all this. Guys, don't give away eternity for that. Let's learn from these people. Thanks, Reeks. Anybody else? You good? Cool, can we end? I'm going to close, and then Mark, can I ask you to please come up as well? Thank you. Oh, yeah. Guys, thanks, Riggs. We're going to be dropping out a survey as well. It is anonymous. Purely the surveys, guys, just to understand where we are as a congregation, what we're wanting to do. So a couple of questions on it is, from a timing point of view, would you guys still continue to prefer to have the main service at 1:30 up until 3? Now, when I talk main service, it's with band, right? Or do you want to have main service in the morning? And then the question is, what time? Do you want to rather have it at 10? Do you want to have it at 9:30? So we'll drop that out. If you guys can, please come back to us on that. And then move second service, which will be then Vince Online, to the afternoon. So that's the one. The other is just to give us some feedback, to let us know, what are we doing well? What are we not doing well? And what must we start, continue? So what must we stop? What must we start, and what must we continue doing? And then just general comments, guys. It's difficult to get everybody's feedback and summarize it all, and we're really just wanting to make sure that we're meeting everybody where they are. That obviously the heart for God is first, and just making sure that you guys are feeling inclusive, you're feeling loved, you're feeling that you're being heard. and that, you know, some guys are saying we can't be here because we've got kids in the morning. So if that's the case and that's their nap time in the afternoon, let's work around, right? So we'll be dropping it out.
Could I try and convince everyone just 1 minute?
Convinced, okay.
I just think the morning service, the Juliet service is very hot in the afternoon, and then you can sleep.
Cool, guys. So just one thing as well, and I don't know if it was previously mentioned, and family, please hear my heart behind this. And I really, really want to make sure that my heart comes across correctly in what I'm saying here. With the after Shabbat gatherings that we're doing, right? We really are enjoying it, and we're loving what people are doing. But guys, we also do not want you to be breaking Shabbat. You can't be cooking on a Shabbat. You can't be setting up or preparing a feast on a Shabbat. You cannot be setting up your house for kings and queens to arrive. You can't be missing service because you're setting up for after service. So guys, what we're going to ask is, if we are going to be doing it, guys, let's just pull. I'm going to use you an example. I think it worked well. Just bring your own food, put it on the table, everybody eats from it, right? We'll just share it out. It's easier. Please, guys, like I'm saying, hear my heart. We cannot be trying to gather after Shabbat, but we're breaking Shabbat to do it. God will pull us out. It's written, you keep my commands, you follow my word. And if we're not doing it and we're teaching it, we will be held accountable. So guys, please, and like I'm saying, hear my heart. We do love it, but it cannot be done. We cannot be going against God's word to do that just for a social. So if I can ask that we do that. You guys good? Okay, can we pray? Please, guys, if you'll stand. Father, we come before you and we just want to thank you, Father, for your word. We thank you for what has been written. Abba, you know, we take a look at this and it was done so many years ago and it's still so relevant today. Father, I pray and I ask that at this time, especially with Yom Kippur coming up, Father, that you search our hearts. Father, where we've got arrogance, where we've got pride, where we've got sin, where we've got unforgiveness, where we've got deeds that we are doing, things that we shouldn't be, words we are saying. Father, where we are being like these kings, where we are doing evil in your eyes, Father, I pray and I ask that you forgive us. And Father, that you help us to see what it is that we're doing so that we can correct ourselves. Father, and if you are chastising any of us at this moment in time, Father, please, Father, let us know what it is that we need to correct so that that can stop and the blessings can flow. Father, I ask that you be with us this week. I ask that you keep us, continue providing for us, heal us. Put your hedge of protection around us, Father, that we read in Job. And Yeshua, I want to thank you for what you've done. Thank you that we can come before you as our high priest, as our king. A king that is uncorruptible. A king that is incorruptible. A king that is a priest that understands the Father's heart. And that is an intercessor for us. Father, I ask that you send your Spirit to fill us, to fill this place, and to fill our families. And those who aren't here, Father, I pray the same for them. And Father, I pray for those whose family members aren't here because of whatever that is that they're not coming here for, Father. That you work on them, that you guide them, and that you help them to see your light. We pray and ask this in your Son Yeshua's name. Amen. Okay. Reeks, do you want to go first and then Mark can go? Because I want Mark to close. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Just one quick thing. Just on my heart, guys, as we end this time of looking for just want you guys to remember the heart behind it.
Sorry, Reeks, maybe just come here for the camera.
I'm too short for you. I don't know if I stand. I was just saying, as we enter this afternoon, let us prepare our hearts for what this is about. We can often get too focused on, oh, it's going to be difficult, oh, it's no food, or yeah, I need the help. David was also short in stature. Let me just let us go into this with the right heart behind it. This is what it's really about. Yom Kippur is not about what we have done, but it's about that judgment that Yeshua went to the cross, and that judgment came upon him. That we wouldn't have to go through that judgment. And it's about recognizing that and saying, where would we be without that life that was given for us? So I just urge you guys, as we go into tonight and we go into this, go in with the right heart. Not going, it's going to be hard. This is, yes. But it's a time of just giving it over to him and going, what is this about? This is a time of giving thanks to him for that great salvation, that we don't have to take on that judgment. So I just urge you guys to spend some time in prayer before tonight even starts. Prepare yourself for that. Where the flesh is weak, the spirit is willing. So
Okay, please stand. יברכך יהובה וישמרך, יאר יהובה פניו אליך וחונך, יישא יהובה פניו אליך וישים לך שלום, בשם ישוע המשיח. Amen. May the Lord keep you and bless you. May he make his face shine upon you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and give you his shalom. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen.